Welcome to another episode of Dubai Real Estate Unplugged, the official podcast of House & House. I'm the Managing Director, Luke Remington, and today I'm joined by Alex Pearson, our Senior Consultant from Arabian Ranches too. In this episode, we'll be diving into the world of first-time buying. We'll discuss popular areas, property types for new buyers, financing options, and breaking down the entire process from A to Z. Let's get started. Alex, welcome.
Mr. Remington.
Nice to have you here.
Thank you so much. I feel privileged to be here.
God, I don't know about that. But why don't you tell us a bit about yourself? I know you've traveled from Oz to Dubai.
Yeah, sure.
You've got a real estate background, so delve into that a bit.
The life of Alex Pearson, right. Well,
Indeed.
Yeah, I spent 7 years in the trade in Melbourne.
Right. The trade being real estate.
The trade being real estate, exactly,
Okay.
yeah, selling homes. And then I thought, time for a bit of a change and a shift. So It happened quite spontaneously, as I'm sure you hear from many people that do venture out here to the Middle East. So I came out in April of 2022, met with a couple of the guys here, and then around August I made the shift.
Was this relating to COVID, Alex, or what was the particular driver to get you out here?
Yeah, so Melbourne was the most locked down city in the world. So that wasn't great, especially for the real estate world.
Yeah.
I think I spent about 6 months at home for the first year COVID kicked in. And that meant the real estate world came to a bit of a standstill as well. Obviously being a commission-only job wasn't the best. So then I guess that sort of preempted me to have a think and look at other options. And I had a friend from the UK that was in Dubai, and he said, mate, you should come and check out the real estate game here. So I went on LinkedIn, messaged a few people, and that's where it started.
Interesting that we're going to be talking about first-time buyers today, Alex. And you've come from what I would say is probably the most professional, forward-thinking real estate market in the world. And, you know, I've been to multiple conferences in the US and looked at that kind of model and, you know, obviously worked for a considerable amount of time in the UK. And I think what you guys do differently there is your marketing superb. You know, I think to get into it, you've got to do quite a lot of,
just to get into the industry, well, you've got to do quite a lengthy, sort of induction process, you can say, almost like studying to get in.
Yeah.
But then once you're in the industry, you don't just go straight into being a salesperson. You work as what they call a sales cadet first,
right,
and then you go into being a sales PA, and then you take on a sales role. So the time from, you know, going in the front door to being a standalone salesperson is generally around 3 years. And over that 3 years, it's just a vigorous sort of training regime they put you on. You know, starting from the very basics, cold calling for somebody else.
Right.
But they really try and sharpen up because the caliber of brokers over there is very high from what I've seen around the rest of the world, for sure. Interesting,
and we'll delve into that in a bit. So look, let's look at the current market. We're talking about first-time buyers predominantly. It's good for someone to buy. Is it good for someone to buy their first home in Dubai? We're seeing that at the moment. How are you seeing the current market at the moment from a overall view? I know you specialize in Arabian Ranches too, which is kind of very popular at the moment, but where isn't?
Yeah.
How are you finding things?
Interesting. It's been crazy going back to the whole, you know, working in the Australian market. When I compare the two, I've never seen anything as active as what I'm seeing at the moment.
Never saw it there.
Never. I've seen growth, and I've seen an average of 10 to 12% consistent growth over my career back there.
Right.
But the level of growth here, the level of you know, those who are relocating to Dubai, some of the prices we're seeing being achieved week after week after week, it's ridiculous. It's insane what's going on.
It's easy for me, and you know, to look from the outside in and just see numbers. But you're meeting people. You know, you're meeting people that are pulling up outside the villa, the husband and wife and the kids, or whoever. Are you seeing many first-time buyers at the moment?
Not particularly, no, because of the area in which I work. It seems to be that the most of those who are buying within ranches too, if they're getting into like the entry level, let's say around that 4 to 5 million bracket, they've already owned their first home in Dubai, and they're taking that next step. Look, there are some people who obviously are slightly better off and have the extra finance there to be able to get into the market.
Okay.
In which case, you know, maybe their first purchase in Dubai, but you know, you still see the typical telltale signs of any first-time buyer, which is the nerves, asking a lot more questions, wanting to have a full understanding of the process, all these sorts of things.
So yeah, interesting you say that. So when we talk about first-time buyers, I think first-time buyers for me, when we're talking and we're discussing it now would be someone buying their first home in Dubai rather than buying their first home in life, you know. So if someone's bought their first property in Australia and then moved to Dubai, that's their first time experience. What are the popular areas that so we're kind of saying entry level into Ranches 2, I don't know at the moment, you're probably going to shock me at about 2.7, 2.8 or...
And the rest, really? even for a 3-bed townhouse, you're looking in excess of 3 now.
Really,
the 4 beds are going over 4 million, and then if you're looking for a standalone villa, there was one sold today for 4.99.
Wow!
And to put that into perspective, I sold the villa next door, same layout, just a year ago for 3.75.
Yeah, and I can remember the Camellias would have probably been 1.5 million to 2.5 years ago.
Yeah,
there's some big growth there.
Massive.
Okay, so let's rule out then Arabian Ranches 2 for first-time buyers. But which other areas are you seeing and your colleagues are hearing? You're hearing that they're kind of saying, because this is what happens in Dubai, isn't it? It's what happened in 2014. It was what happened in 2008. So as areas become popular, people will kind of go out into the other areas, the peninsular areas. Which areas are you hearing the hotspots?
The two that come to mind would be JVC and JVT.
Yeah.
Some buyers looking Arjan as well as like an up-and-coming area. And I think the main reason is from an affordability perspective, but also a lot of these first-time buyers are not necessarily looking for a home that they would want to live in long-term. Often they're thinking from an investment point of view as well.
Yeah.
And when you're looking in these areas, they've still got a lot of growth to come.
Yeah.
The rental yields are extremely high. So and also the occupancy rates are high as well if they're going to use it for a short-term, like an Airbnb type setup as well.
Yeah. Do you feel at the moment the perspective has changed, Alex, where clients were coming in and they're thinking, well, I'm going to be here for a while, let's rent and let's continue to rent. Whereas now it's, well, we may rent, but we're also just going to buy for an investment purpose.
Yeah, 100%.
We're going to get on this train, which everyone else is getting on by having double-digit increases happening month after month.
Yeah, and I think you need to look at it from that point of view as well. If you are renting, you need to sort of broaden things slightly and look at how you can get into the market, even if, like I say, you're not going to buy something where you want to live necessarily, but just so you can get on this train, because paying rent is just dead money, isn't it? And everyone knows this. And I think if you ask most tenants, you know, would you prefer to have bought? I'm sure most would say yes, but once again, it comes down to the affordability side of things. I've
mentioned this in last week's podcast that we did. Like I said, and I'm sorry to harp on about it, but you're meeting the clients. Are they edging? Are they edgy? Are they concerned? How often are they saying, Alex, is it the right time?
Yeah.
Have I missed the boat? No one wants to lose. I think you can handle if you're getting your rent and the property kind of levels off, but no one wants to see this drop. Are you hearing this much?
Yeah, and I think I would say the majority of buyers who I work with would ask that question at some point, or would hint towards what would be the case if the market was to shift. And look, I guess there's merit to it as well, because if you look historically with Dubai, when there's been a negative shift in the market, it's not like the established markets globally where it's a 10% correction. There's been massive dips. So you can understand why there would be more speculation around that. I think as time goes, Dubai is becoming a lot more of a mature market as well. So I don't think this will be the case. So I relay this to my clients, but obviously, you know, you have to understand there's going to be some speculation there once again.
Do your clients believe you?
Yeah. Well, look, I'm a salesperson, so
that's what I'm not trying to go against grain. But look, let's be honest, we're real estate brokers, and you know, in terms of politicians or real estate brokers or double glazing people, you know, that when they're asking you, have we missed the boat? They're probably assuming, Alex, that you're going to say, no, you haven't.
100%. Yeah.
I was doing a podcast again a few weeks ago, and we were looking at, you know, the prices, and we were looking at data with Zanja Hinkie, who's the COO of Property Monitor. He was predicting a tail off last year for this year, which we haven't seen. So your crystal ball and his crystal ball or my crystal ball, it doesn't. We're not Nostradamus. We can't predict the future. That's the reason I'm actually wondering how much influence you can actually give to people. Because if they meet 5 real estate brokers, they're all probably going to say, yeah, it's still going up and it's going to continue going up. And you're going to, we see these stupid things like, an agent showed me a property and he said, if I buy it, by the time I've completed on it, it's going to be worth 15, 20% more.
Exactly. And that's the thing. I think, it is crystal ball stuff. Yeah. And my opinion may be wrong. Your opinion may be wrong. A buyer's opinion may be wrong. And I guarantee if you look online, there'd be 50% of articles saying the market's going to go up, 50% saying the market's going to go down. So you can understand why people would be torn. I look at it I try and separate the business side of things. I use my personal experience saying I've just invested in the Dubai property market. Yeah. As a broker, being in the market every single day, if I thought there was going to be a catastrophic dip in the market, I certainly wouldn't have invested myself.
Yeah.
And obviously the things like the population growth, the schooling, I think even over the past couple of years, I'm meeting more people that are moving to Dubai permanently as opposed to business people who are coming and going.
Yeah.
So it's becoming more of a hotspot as issues arise globally with other economies. You can see more and more people have more reasoning as to, wanting to park their money somewhere a bit safer, like Dubai.
Yeah.
So I think there's definitely more positives than negatives that would showcase more growth as opposed to a downturn in the market.
100%. And look, we come from very, very nice countries. Yeah. A lot of us will go back to our home countries and we'll probably cut it short because we just want to come back to Dubai. We're very fortunate to live here. When we're talking about, you're talking JVC, JVT, these kind of areas, you're seeing, what are people looking at? Are they looking at the apartments? Are they looking at the villas?
Yep.
Obviously, we've got a lot more supply of apartments than villas. How are people deciding? I suppose if you've got a dog, you want the garden, or if you've got kids, you want the garden, or is it if you've got kids, they'll actually do with it the outside balcony?
Yeah, I think it comes down to people's lifestyles as well. Like if people travel a lot, even if they've got kids and the pet, they might want an apartment that they can just lock up and that's it, job done.
Yeah.
But then again, there are those who may want a townhouse or something a bit larger, in which case JVT could be a really good option, because looking at the townhouse price brackets, obviously it's not my area of specialty at all, but they do seem to be a lot more affordable than if you're looking at sort of surrounding communities.
Yeah. No apartments in Arabian Ranches too?
No.
So you're not getting that question?
No.
But then you've obviously got people that are going to want maybe the facilities that come with apartments, such as gyms and, communal swimming pools and stuff that maybe it's not going to have in the villas area.
Yeah.
Interesting.
But yeah, as you say though, those who are looking JVC, JVT, and a lot of the first-time buyers who I speak to, even friends of mine and colleagues and so forth, generally it is the apartments that they're looking at because, once again, it's the affordability side of things more than anything else. Yes, you might not see as much capital appreciation, but you can get yourself in quick enough, potentially put a tenant in there, and then, use that as leverage for your next purchase.
Yeah, agree. The buy-in process. This is always a difficult one. You've talked about odds. You've got quite a lot of rules and regulations. You've got to start low and you work your way up, and it doesn't happen overnight. Yeah. What do first-time buyers need to have in place to get things started? It's probably everyone's waltzing through. The app, Property Finder, Bayou, what have you. They're looking at properties. They're sending out messages. What's the next step for them?
Yeah, look, one thing I would always recommend to any buyer is have a conversation with a mortgage broker, even if you're potentially 12 months away from buying, because they'll be able to give you the in-depth answer as to, looking at their personal finances. It's a bit of a tricky one for a broker to start trying to pick people's finances apart. Yeah. But I'll always ask the question, have you got your pre-approval? If not, then the first steps I would do is get in touch with a mortgage broker, a mortgage advisor, because they can pick apart their situation, whether it's just themselves buying solo or as a couple, look at what they've got saved, look at what they're going to need to get the pre-approval for a certain amount of money. And then you can start to sort of narrow down locations, price tags, because if you're just plucking something off the top of your head, you might be looking at something that's well above your price bracket, and then you fall in love with a particular area, particular home, and realize that you can't quite get in there just yet. So I think the first step would be, have that chat with a mortgage broker.
Is it me, or do buyers potentially feel a bit apprehensive about speaking to the mortgage broker before speaking? Or, do you ever get that feeling like, no, I haven't spoken to one and I don't want to yet?
Yeah.
Why is this?
A typical response that we get is, no, my finance will be okay. It's okay.
Yeah.
And it's almost like just trying to push that to the side. I think it's because anything real estate orientated, people's initial response is to be on the back foot. Yeah. It's like, are they going to try and lock me into something here? is this broker doing this to make sure I've got my pre-approval so they force me to buy? It's all these sort of preconceived misjudgments, I suppose, of the industry. Well, not necessarily a misjudgment, because you do get those people in the industry. But yeah, I think there's just people tend to hold off.
It's strange. I'll go into the question after, but it's strange to me why in this market where you've probably got multiple buyers for properties, the ones that are actually going to go for the property or be in the best position are the ones that are already going to have the pre-approval, the bank. And therefore I wonder, would it be buyers assuming, okay, I've moved from the UK, I know I've banked with HSBC, or you've moved from Australia and you've banked with your Australian National Bank, and you've spoken to numerous financial advisors and you know things are right, and you've banked with them and you can get a certain level. I just wonder if there's something a bit more with why people are a bit more apprehensive about speaking to the financial advisor right here.
Well, people are also, sorry to jump in, people are also quite loyal to their own banks. And what I say is just have the conversation, because obviously if you're with HSBC, they're not going to tell you to go elsewhere for a better rate. Whereas if you're working with a mortgage advisor, they will do the shopping around for you and give you the best rate for your situation. For example, if you're buying from the UK, there are some banks who might need a 50% down payment for you to buy without living here in the UAE, whereas there are some banks who will do it for the 20%. But unless you shop around, unless you speak to the right people, you'd never know this.
And there's a big difference. I know we're probably just talking about the real estate, but there's a big difference in mortgage brokers as well, the way they'll act and they'll treat the clients. So there's a lot of difference between speaking to that mortgage broker that's going to offer you that product and that one that'll actually probably give you more time, really try and understand and assess your needs and wants and say, well, on paper you can afford this, but if you do, you're probably not going to be able to afford your gym membership or something like that.
And I've noticed that probably more so with Dubai than from my experience with Australia, being in Australia as well. Unfortunately, some clients are told what they want to hear by mortgage advisors.
Here or there?
Here.
Right.
And they commit to a contract. And it's thankfully, generally speaking, is subject to final mortgage approval. But then when it comes crunch time, when they're looking to get the approval in place, they're nowhere near it and they can't afford it. So I think, once again, make sure you're getting in touch with the right person, speak to the broker you're working with. Most reputable brokerages out here and brokers would have the contacts for good mortgage advisors.
So, okay, so we've spoken to you, you've referred us on to someone, and we've spoken to the mortgage advisor. We understand the numbers that we can get. We then look at properties. I've picked this out just thinking about what I'd be thinking today if I was a buyer. So we know the market's on fire. We know that I think something like 11,000 buyers had registered with us in the last 2 months. So you've got an abundance of buyers. How are you dealing with these buyers? Because there's going to be people listening to this podcast that have been sending out WhatsApps or emails and they're viewing requests and they don't get a reply. Knowing I was doing this podcast today, I actually sent out 2 last night, 2 randoms. I picked JLT as an area. And I sent 2 requests, both apartments, and I just said, I'm interested. There's that preset message. Neither have got back to me, and it's about 2:00 the next day. So we're well into 24 hours. What difference, Alex, is it working with you compared to, or the company compared to someone like them where they don't respond? So you've got an abundance of buyers, you've got fewer properties, supply's difficult. How are you showing empathy and emotion to first-time buyers? Because it is nerve-wracking. We're buying for the first time in Dubai, or we could be buying for the first time in our life. And you're probably calling your dad or your uncle or someone to, am I doing the right thing? Am I not? And you're second guessing. How would you personally say that you would be treating people differently to other brokers, which you see how it goes?
Yeah, for sure. I think that once again comes down to the caliber of broker. I think anyone sending an inquiry should receive a phone call from the broker. Obviously you get a message back, but any competent broker should be picking up the phone and making that call, regardless of the value of the property. The process doesn't change. I know this may sound salesy, cliche type chat, but whether it's a 1.5 million dirham home or a 20 million dirham home, the process in between from a sale doesn't actually shift from a broker's point of view. Therefore, the level of service, in my opinion, shouldn't shift as well.
Okay.
And I guess that can come down to internal culture within a company as well. And one thing that you guys obviously push massively is that culture on all levels, regardless of who you are, what you do. It's having the respect for everyone equally. And I think that's a massive factor. And I think there's no excuse for any broker out there who isn't responding to buyers, regardless of what price tag they're inquiring on.
I think, as we know, one of our values is we obsess over the customer. And I think we do a pretty good job in that, just looking at our reviews and so on and so forth. And I think what buyers have got to understand that if someone is putting a property on the market at 1 million or 10 million, that agent saying, I'm putting it on at 1 million to get interest, I've got to expect clients with a 1 million budget and I've got to give them the time and the effort involved.
Yeah. And also, when you've got these properties that are 1 or 2 million dirhams, it may not be a first-time buyer inquiring. It may be somebody like yourself. It may be an investor. Yeah. It may be somebody who owns 30 of these units and they want to buy another 10 or they want to buy off plan. So from a broker point of view, it doesn't matter who's inquiring. Dig deeper and find out more about that particular person and what else could come from that. They may have some friends who want to buy from you. Yeah. They may have some family who's got a really nice villa to sell or a few apartments to sell. There's more than just that one phone call and that one inquiry from a broker point of view, that is.
So you've seen a property on when you're scrolling through the app or on the desktop and you can see that picture and there's another picture that looks quite familiar and it's the same price as the other one, so the prices are similar, the pictures are similar, the description's similar. One would then assume it's the same property, and we know that the property could be on with 1, 2 or 3 brokers. Who do I contact?
That's a great question. And I think this goes down to the importance of having a buyer's agent and just one broker who you trust and you work with them as your buyer's agent, because there's another factor to this, and it's the online side of things with Dubai property is all over the place. Yeah. There are fake listings everywhere. I know they're trying to make shift and they're trying to crack down on this, but there are still fake listings everywhere. The same seller can be listed with 3 different companies, different brokers. All this does is it creates massive confusion among buyers, but also they're not getting the right information because there may be a listing online that was from 4 months, 5 months, 6 months ago, and there's now a 15% difference in price between that and the actual current market price. So this goes back to my point, having that broker that you know and you trust and you work with them. And this is one thing I push with my clients is I say, look, you're going to see listings online, send them across to me. I'll be able to do the checking for you, make sure you know if it's legitimate or not. And then I can contact the broker for you. The commission still works the same. You're not paying extra commission. You still pay the 2% commission. It just means you're getting a better level of service once again, and you're not going to be dealing with the rubbish either that's out there on the internet.
What would be the benefit of someone advertising a listing 15% under the value that, or a value that was there 3, 4, 5 months ago?
Yeah, the simple answer is clickbait. They're not going to benefit from that particular property because it doesn't exist. So brokers will put, and this happens in ranches too a lot, they'll have a particular type home that they know is a popular layout. They'll put the price online 10 to 15% below, like you say, or leave a listing up there for 4 or 5 or 6 months. That will generate a load of inquiry. So these naive people or people who aren't familiar with the Dubai property market will be inquiring thinking, I found myself an absolute bargain purchase here. Yeah. And the broker will say, really sorry, this home is sold available. Yesterday. The seller changed their mind. Oh, there's an issue. We can't get access. However, I've got another listing. Only downfall is it's at 1.5 million more.
Yeah. Shouldn't the client be wary if they receive that kind of instant feedback? Look, that listing isn't available. My CRM system broke and it's not connected to the portal and I can't take it offline, or the owner's changed his mind 5 minutes ago. I can't believe you just called now. Such a shame, you just missed out. Should the client be wary of that?
Yeah, I think that goes back to the caliber of broker. And I think if a broker needs to use these tactics to generate business and to try and do future business, in my opinion, they're not the best broker and you shouldn't be working with them. And it's the same with brokers who are going to offer like discounted rates on commission, like for a buying commission that obviously we know that it's a market norm that a buyer pays 2%. Yeah. There may be brokers out there who will say, I'll do it for 1%. But what buyers don't realise is there's always a caveat to this. Like any broker on the planet, if you're going to be, if they could get 2%, they would.
Yeah.
So generally speaking, they're either going to charge the seller more, who will cover it, or there'll be some other hidden agenda behind something like this.
What do you mean they'll charge the seller more so they'll cover it?
So often they'll have an agreement with the seller where, like, let's say if they speak to a buyer and there's 1% agreed, the buyer may be more inclined to offer on that particular property as opposed to something else because they think they're getting a discount. But then they're bumping up the fee on the seller's side.
They're telling the seller to increase it by that
price,
extra 1% they're missing out.
Yeah.
So in theory, the buyer's still paying it. He's just paying it to the seller, who then the seller pays to the agent.
It's basically on the price tag as opposed to going straight to the broker, which eventually does the full circle anyway.
Yeah. You mentioned fees, leads on nicely. So we're paying, industry norm is 2%. If you are getting something cheaper, just make sure you read into the contract, do you use due diligence. If it's less, what other things do we need to consider? And also this information would be given after speaking to the mortgage advisor. They could kind of run through this.
Yep.
But give us a quick breakdown. 2%
on the fees to purchase.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you've got the 2% broker fee,
the
4% to buy land department.
Which is like would be like your tax in Australia or our stamp duty in the UK.
Exactly, like a stamp duty. And then you've got the 20, generally speaking, a 20% down payment. So let's say working off numbers, if you're working off a 2 million dirham purchase, which I'd say is probably the sweet spot for most first-time buyers in Dubai.
Okay.
You need about 520K up front.
Okay.
And then you've got mortgage registration fee. You've got other small fees, like a mortgage registration fee, which is 0.25% of the purchase price. And conveyancing, which is generally around 8,000 dirhams.
Okay.
So that would give you a fair breakdown around give or take 500,000 for a 2 million dirham purchase.
Okay. I look today, attractive rates out there at the moment, 3-year fixed under 4%. Yeah. It's really attractive. Are you finding a lot of people are financing, or I think one thing I want to touch on is fear of missing out. Yeah. So are people financing? Do they have fear of missing out, and therefore if they've got cash, I've got to go with the quickest potential option where the seller's going to think I can get my money as soon as possible? What are people going down this finance mortgage route?
Yeah, I think for my market in particular, in ranches too, the majority of buyers would be finance. You still get, when you're looking at the higher value stuff, and these people who already own multiple villas, then you'll see a cash purchase a lot of the time. But generally speaking, it's a finance purchase, and especially those first time buyers.
Yeah.
And my recommendation would be to go down that route. If you've got that, let's say you've got 2 million in the bank, I wouldn't say put it all into the one property. Like you can spread it out. You can buy your first home. You can keep some of the cash on the side to then look to reinvest in something else, perhaps.
Yeah.
But I would recommend that approach for sure.
And then, okay, so we found the property, we've offers been accepted or negotiations going on. You've hopefully been with the broker for a while. You've built up some relationship and ultimately probably the trust. Contracts are signed.
Yeah.
How long are we waiting till we get the keys?
Generally, it's a 6-week process. So if you're dealing with a seller and there's no mortgage on the home, then it's 6 weeks. If you're dealing with a seller and there is a mortgage on the home, then it's 8 weeks. That's if you're a finance buyer.
Yeah.
If it's a cash-to-cash purchase, it can be 4 weeks, if not less.
Okay.
But generally speaking, around 6 weeks. So you need to do, the bank needs to do a valuation of the asset in which you're purchasing. You need to get your final offer letter. And if a seller's got a mortgage, they need to apply for a liability letter. So that there's a few steps in between, but that process generally is around the 6-week mark.
If you were viewing and people weren't asking you this information, you're unknown to it. But if you were speaking to an agent that wasn't giving you this information, off the bat, without you having to ask, do you not think it's a concern for the client to be thinking, well, they aren't telling me stuff, or do they blame themselves for not asking? The agents a lot of the time don't actually know the process.
Yeah.
This is concerning, right?
Yeah.
You should be concerned if your agent doesn't know a lot of the process, the buying process, the selling process, the liability letter, the time scales, etc.
Yeah, and I think it's almost like a duty of care, and that's how I look at it as a broker, because especially for somebody who hasn't bought in the marketplace before, my opinion is that rather than let it get to contract stage and give them all this information, their heads are going to explode because they're already working out the figures. They've got to organise a check. They've got the Form A, the Form B, the Form F, like all these different things going on. To simplify this, when you first meet a client, the best approach would be go for a coffee with them. After you've viewed some options, you know what they're looking for, you've built that relationship, sit down, have a coffee, have this exact conversation. Make them familiar with the process from start to finish. That will let them be more at ease with how things work, and then you can take it from there for the next steps.
Does it bother you going for a coffee with someone if they don't end up buying for you?
Not at all. It happens all the time.
Life, right?
It's life. It's like making a cold call and you don't get anything from it. I was going through some messages recently to a sale that I had actually, and I saw there was about 30 unread messages, and then eventually there was one response, and that ended up becoming a 10 million dirham sale. It's like you feel this little level of rejection every single time, and then all of a sudden, bang, there it is. But also, like what I said before, going for a coffee with someone, you can't go into it expecting a transaction or expecting to get paid.
Yeah.
However, if you've got a good enough relationship with somebody, if they don't buy from you and you've done a really good job, once again, they'll put you in touch with the right people, with their friends, with their family, and that will have a knock-on and a flow-on effect to future business.
And that's why I wonder whether it's the apprehension from a client to think, well, I don't want to waste this guy's time because I'm not sure if I'm going to buy.
Yeah.
I want to buy, but again, the talking to the mortgage advisor, talking to the broker, hearing some horror stories. It's a new country, settle in, shall I rent? I'm here on fire, have I missed the boat? That's why I'm wondering if clients would probably think, let's not have the coffee, Alex. I don't want to waste your time. But what you're saying is do it.
Yeah, I can get that. And they don't want to give that extra level of commitment because some people may feel obligated in a way to then go a bit further down the line or throughout the process. But what I would say is have the coffee, extract as much information as you can, whether you're buying now or in 5 years' time. Yeah. If you're a client of mine, if I've met with you, I'll be happy to represent you regardless of when that is. And if you decide to work with somebody else, that's also fine.
Yeah.
It makes no difference for myself. Other brokers should have the same view. I'd imagine any decent broker out there would share the same view.
Yeah.
But definitely pick the brains of the right people, and it'll just make the whole process smoother. No. Plus, you can also then relay information to your friends, to your family. If you've spoken to the right person and they've given you genuinely good advice, then when you're out there having conversations with, as I say, with friends and family, you can relay the exact same information to them.
Yeah, cool. Fear of missing out. What top tips you got for buyers at the moment? My gut would tell me that don't fear missing out. Usually your gut's right.
Yeah.
Don't overstretch.
Yep.
And it usually works out in the end, right? I think there's probably lots and lots of people day in, day out that have just been pipped to the post on a purchase. You've seen those markets in the and Oz, I've seen them in the UK. Hold firm, and there's stuff coming to the market, and a good broker will keep you posted.
Yep.
If you're not seeing stuff online, are you still selling properties? So you selling properties that don't go online?
Yeah.
Should clients get in touch with you again to actually say, this is what I want? Mm-hmm. When it comes up, let me know, because you're not always putting stuff on the websites, right?
No, a lot of my transactions recently have been off market, and it's a great question. A lot of sellers in this market, they know that the second their home goes online, if they are actual photos, not generic photos of the property, they are going to be swarmed, and I mean swarmed with 15, 20, 30 calls per day from brokers trying to wriggle their way in. I've had a few transactions recently where my clients have been relatively private people. They still live family lives. They're hardworking. They don't particularly want this much attention around them selling. So they've said, look, can you introduce buyers who you know? One of the benefits of being at House and House, obviously, is if I bring up a listing in Ranches too, and it's priced well, I can share that with the likes of the brokers through Dubai Hills, Jumeirah Golf Estates, Arabian Ranches 1. And I've had 2 of my last 3 deals have been with Dubai Hills brokers bringing their clients through who are getting priced out of that market.
Yeah.
So yeah, 100% that does happen. So on that point, if you've got a good broker who you know does business in a particular area, they are going to have relationships with sellers who aren't on the market for that exact reason.
Yeah, makes sense. On that, the last point is we're talking about kind of agencies there, and we can see it with 3 agencies. Is there one that we should trust more? Do we trust the larger ones? Do we trust the smaller ones? Do we trust the green logo, the pink logo, the blue logo?
Yeah.
What is the difference with using a bigger agency compared to a smaller agency? Or one like, I think it goes obviously I'm going to say this, but it makes a massive difference when you've been in the business as a company for over 10 years and you've got, you see the way that we don't always get it right. And we do get complaints. I think it would be ridiculous for me to say that we don't, as a estate agent, we don't, or a real estate company. But what I would say is hand on heart that within minutes of receiving that, there'll be a director trying to sort it out and fix it and have some kind of emotions and empathy on the side of either party. What would you say?
Yeah, 100%. I think working with a reputable company is everything. Look, obviously you've got the brokers in there, and it's almost like each broker runs their own individual brand and business within the overall umbrella of the company. So, you might come across those who you have disagreements with, regardless of what company it is, but also when you've got the company backing, that's one of the main things that drew me to House & House was the size, the culture, the overall backing. Like I say, because I know that if I've got a client that wants to buy in any part of Dubai, just about, we've got somebody who operates there. So it makes things internally a lot easier. But then if you're a client, you know that, if this particular broker doesn't have exactly what you're looking for, they will be able to find you something internally. Yeah.
And if you're working internally, you're going to find it a lot easier than if you're going out to a broker from another agency.
100%.
Quick fire quiz. One question. How many new real estate companies opened in Dubai and so let's say the last 30 days? What would you say?
My guess would be, I'd say about one a day on average. I'm going to guess 30 in 30 days.
What about for Todges? Around 180.
So
if you are a buyer
That's
and
madness.
180 new company, now I'm not saying they're all big. Some people are opening with one agent or no agents or just the company owner, but that gives buyers some idea. With 180 new real estate companies coming into the market last month, approximately, then we're going to take in consideration probably 2,500 different companies at the moment. And you've got some companies doing one transaction a year, or you've got companies like us that are doing around 150 to 200 sales per month, plus off plan, plus 200 plus leases. There's a lot of knowledge and in depth that goes in there. Give Alex a shout if you are looking in Arabian Ranches too. That's a wrap for today's episode, and thanks for joining us on Dubai Real Estate Unplugged. Remember, if you're looking to take that leap into home and ownership, don't hesitate to reach out to our specialists. We're here to help you with your next move. And don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform. Take care and goodbye.